we need to think of a new advert for freebets.com.
Get your best betting offers from freebets.com.
Yeah, that'll do.
The following deals are now live.
This is Matt for Boxing Social in association with Empire, Fight Store, Forged Irish Stout and freebets.com. We're here, Gareth A. Davies. Gareth, how the devil are we, my friend?
I'm very well, Lifesaver Lenihan. How are you?
Yeah, I can't complain. 1 week to go before the big one in Saudi Arabia, Joshua and Ngannou. Before we get on to that, there's a few other things that I'd put down first that are sort of more, I say, come out in the last sort of 24, 48 hours that I want to obviously speak to you about. We'll start with Canelo. It's been reported, I think, Mike Coppinger said they've parted ways with the PBC. Obviously, he's had a long-time relationship with Eddie Hearn. Rumours are he's expected to return there with the likes of Haney-Garcia and Edgar Berlanga named as potential opponents for this May date. What have you make of this, and are you surprised with how this has unfolded?
Well, I think there were 2 fights left on his PBC deal. He's had this one. I think he had one more, so he's obviously getting out of it. I'm surprised in some ways because Amazon Prime was a really good place for him to go. It's got a huge reach, of course, one of the biggest subscriber bases in the world, but obviously it's a new platform. So, you know, the thing is, Canelo can do what Canelo wants, frankly. He's at that stage in his career. I think we want to see him. Berlanga looked very good on Saturday night, by the way. Big overhand right, I think it was, that he finished his opponent in the 6th round. Pleased for Berlanga. Nice to see him back and get a powerful win under his belt. My favourites are in this order. For Canelo would be David Benavidez, then Terence Crawford, then Jaime Munguia. And a lot of people are poo-pooing the Terence Crawford fight, but I just think it'd be amazing. Look, he's going to do what's best for him. The fact are you suggesting he may get back into the mix with Eddie Hearn?
That's what's the suggestion online, and obviously I know you can't go off everything that's read online, but with obviously Berlanga touted for Canelo, Jaime Munguia, obviously that relationship he's had with DAZN, I think there's a general consensus that, and first of all, I was surprised because obviously when you've got a deal with the PBC, I thought, well, that deal, especially like you just said there with Prime, I thought, well, there's no way he'll be able to just sever that and bounce, but we don't know what was in the contract. But yeah, Berlanga, Munguia, Crawford's now a free agent as well. So chucks that into the mix as well.
Yeah, and also I think, you know, we could probably surmise that if the opponent is going to be Jamal Charlo, he would have stayed with the PBC, but that looks like it's disappearing because Charlo is still with Al Heyman in the PBC, isn't he? So yeah, I think he is. I'm almost certain he is. But yeah, it's a confusing situation. Canelo's got a lot of clout, remember. I kind of bumped into Eddie Reynoso when we were out in Riyadh in December. I wish I'd tried to speak more to him about it. I was actually asking him at the time if Joshua could come back and be mentally strong. Had he ever seen it in fights before? Because Reynoso, his trainer, is, I think, arguably the best in the world right now. Arguably. You know, look at what he's done with people. And yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I thought we were going to get the Canelo announcement last week. And like I say, I still wouldn't rule out. I mean, I know Canelo said it doesn't do any favours for him to fight Canelo because it's a lose-lose. If he wins, he's expected to win. If he loses, then it doesn't help his legacy. But I think it's a fascinating matchup. He's got to fight David Benavidez, and Jaime Munguia is a good opponent. I'd rather see him face those than Berlanga, in my view, by the way.
I think Benavidez is the one, isn't it, that everybody's been talking about. I don't know if this rumoured potential move to this side, sort of back with Eddie, I don't know what that does for the Benavidez fight in the long run, obviously, because Benavidez is on sort of this side of the fence where he's sort of come away from. Do you think that puts that fight in a little bit of jeopardy just because of the working relationships between maybe Eddie and Al and the PBC.
Yeah, and I think that all this points to is that period a year and a half ago when Canelo was fighting four times. He fought four times in a year, didn't he? And it was through the lockdown period. It's the time of fighting Billy Joe Saunders, and he's powerfully in control of his own career, and I think it's another statement from him that I'm not going to be dictated to by promoters. Now, what happens with that contractual agreement, I don't know. Whether he might have to pay some money to the PBC, but we shall see. I don't think we're going to get the fight we want next, but I do think we will get the David Benavidez fight eventually before he retires, because there will be too many question marks otherwise. He doesn't fear anyone, Canelo. It's all a timing thing. And I think what he also does is, I was chatting in Talk Sports about this the other day, if what he also does is, by facing Benavidez, if Canelo beats Benavidez and Benavidez then goes on and does a lot more, he's left that legacy stream for himself, like Mayweather did against Canelo, because everyone harks back to the victory that obviously he had, and they will with Bivol, because the Bivol victory was outstanding. But again, Canelo realized that night that super middleweight is his limit. He's a middleweight, really. He's not a massive guy. And I think we should celebrate him as long as he's here, because he is a modern legend. There's no question about it. You speak to anyone, by the way, people start to disrespect people when they've been around a long time, Matt. And I think because they forget what people have done. You talk to any boxers about him, you talk to the likes of John Riley, you talk to coaches like Ben Davison, and they just talk about the tiny adjustments that he makes, that he's such a clever fighter. Talk to Callum Smith about him, such a clever fighter. And he really is. He really is an amazing character. And I first came across him years ago through, he's passed now, it's a tiny story, Don Chargin, who was a great promoter with his wife in Los Angeles in the 50s, 60s and 70s. Don Chargin passed away a couple of years ago, but he was an amazing character and spotter of fighters, and he'd spotted that left hook to the body of Canelo when he was a teenager and advised Oscar De La Hoya to sign him. And Don Chargin went back to the days when he was a teenager, and he'd be ringside watching Sugar Ray Robinson sparring and wink at him and say, "I'm going to do this now." So that lineage is there, and lineage is always important in boxing, and there's no way that Canelo will leave this sport without completing his lineage.
You've mentioned there, I think it's important to touch on about Canelo and obviously what he's done for the sport and leaving that lineage. But isn't it a sign that you've done so much to the sport, the fact that you do get people who doubt or who do throw a little bit of, I say, negativity? Because when you get to a point, it always seems like somebody's ducking someone when they're not. And it's like, well, if he beats Benavidez, there'll be another one that comes along. And if he don't fight them, he's not ducking these people. Like, his resume is a who's who of whatever.
There is an overlap where they ought to fight, Matt. There is an overlap because he's been around long enough, and I spoke to Mauricio Suleiman about this, the president of WBC, last week. He does believe they'll fight. I think I'm right in saying that Benavidez has twice been called a mandatory for this belt now. He's certainly been called it now anyway.
Yeah.
And
he'll get called, I think, for that as well.
Yeah, and I don't think he's not avoiding people, but he's doing it in his own way. He's playing the A-side game, and that's what people in Canelo's position did. I mean, I watched Floyd Mayweather doing it for years and years and years, and picking Shane Mosley at the right time, and Cotto at the right time, and Canelo at the right time, Pacquiao at the right time, Ricky Hatton at the right. He was very, very clever in the management of his career at that point. And let's be honest, Canelo has really pushed himself, and he doesn't deserve any disrespect whatsoever. He's in the 60s of his fights. He's only ever lost twice. He's gone up 4 weight divisions and become a world champion. He's an extraordinary ambassador for the sport. He's had a couple of blemishes in his career, things that have happened. But other than that, as I say, he is a genuine modern legend of our sport. Think about this. Imagine if we had a character in the UK. I remember saying at one time, I think Canelo to Mexico is almost like he's like a David Beckham.
I nearly said that.
Role. It's like a David Beckham, but you might throw in a Lady Di there or something of that. That he's got not someone of that ilk. That he's almost royalty to Mexico, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, I read a comment interestingly, just the last one sort of on Canelo, because I think we might have spoke about this before as well. You've got the likes of a Chris Eubank Jr. and people think that'd be an interesting fight with the likes of Canelo. Eddie Hearn's come out recently and said, and I think probably because of all the negotiations that have been going on with him and Conor Benn, saying he's running scared from Conor Benn, who's a welterweight, and he wants to jump up to 168 to fight Canelo Alvarez. No chance. And in terms of money that Canelo wants, that wouldn't be a big enough fight. What do you make of them comments when he's been linked with the likes of an Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia? Would you like to see Chris Eubank Jr.'s name thrown in the mix with a Canelo?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think it'd be great for Chris Eubank Jr., but the problem is they haven't been proactive enough in making that happen, in my view. Not out there enough, not out there enough at Canelo's events, getting in the face, all of those kind of things, making a lot of noise. I know he wants the fight. And obviously, it'd be an opportunity for Canelo to come to the UK and beat a British boxer in the UK. It'd be a big fight here. It's got a massive fan base here, but I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, Eubank hasn't made enough noise in the last year to make that happen. And I had a debate with someone the other day, and outside might be with one of your rivals. Outside the heavyweights, who's the biggest British star or biggest name? It's probably Conor Benn.
Yeah,
obviously Eubank's a part of that kind of formula, if you like. If you were putting that list together, Anthony Yard, and others, Tunde J put forward that I think it might have been with Spencer Fearon recently, or with one of your rivals, that he's outside the heavyweights, he's the biggest name. But
he referenced how many numbers he brings in, Anthony Yard.
Based on those YouTube numbers and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's Conor Benn. And they've done it by making a lot of noise. I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. makes enough noise when he's not active, and I think could do more work on it.
What do you make of I don't want to call them negotiations, because it always becomes very public when Gervonta Davis gets a message off Eddie Hearn. I think the offer was for 10 million, and then we'll talk about an upside guarantee. And Gervonta's like, "Where's this promised 25?" And then obviously you have your back and forth, which obviously still happens. I think Gervonta Davis now, I can't remember if it says if it's definitely set, but it was reported that he will fight Frank Martin in a defensive, which I think is a very good fight, by the way. Frank Martin's an exceptional fighter. But what do you make of that fight that was sort of touted and happened, and negotiations falling apart again?
Well, it was a hard fight for Gervonta because he's coming up 2 weight divisions and he's risking things. My understanding is he earned $40 million for the fight with Ryan Garcia. So 25 to him is okay. And then when he's offered 10, and you aren't going to get $15 million upside, I think, from a Conor Benn fight, which is probably in the UK going to do 450,000 pay-per-view buys, something like that.
Yeah.
In the UK and the US, I think it would do about that, because people want to see Conor Benn against Gervonta Davis, who's one of the most talented boxers in the world, who fascinatingly, by the way, I just watched a little reel this morning on one of the social media channels with Floyd Mayweather Sr. saying that Devin Haney owned Gervonta Davis in their sparring session. Did you see that?
know which one you're talking about, because it was there was an interview we did years ago, Floyd Mayweather Senior, where they were talking about Gervonta, and he says, "I know who beat him," and he goes, someone says Devin Haney, and he goes, "Yeah." So that fight's always sort of lingering in the background as well.
Oh, it's going to happen. It's a super fight. I mean, look, Conor Benn was linked with about 10 names, Matt, after his last victory. I can't even remember the name of his opponent now. Who was it?
Peter Dog.
Peter Dobson, yeah, Pistol Pete, yeah, it was very tough. But I think we'll see Conor in some big fights this year. I do think we will do that, and they've made a lot of noise. And they made him a big name. We just need that hearing or the appeal hearing to be completed. Don't say another 2 weeks to me, because I've been hearing 2 weeks over and over and over again for about we're in March on Friday. It's March. Yeah, we were told it would be mid-January, so God knows what's going on. And in that time, we've seen Conor Benn and Robert Smith greet each other at an event. Conor Benn apologised to so many people, myself included, for slapping the microphone that night. I mean, he's very reticent now, and about the way it was handled, and we need this resolution, because he needs to know what's going on in his career. It's been a very, very long time.
100%. Look, before we talk about obviously what's next week, I think today in New York, press conference, Haney-Garcia, Devin Haney. How much are you looking forward to this? I think as one of these fights like we saw last year with Ryan and Gervonta, such a big fight. It's happening in New York. It's moved from Vegas. It was originally set for Vegas. It's moved to New York. I expect a lot of back and forth at this press conference today. Are you looking forward to it?
Not the press conference in particular. I've got a really busy day because I'm going to the Middle East tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I've got a ton of things to do. I've got lots of things to do today, really, recordings and stuff before I leave, and plans putting together. We know what's going to happen. Haney-Garcia is going to get right in Devin Haney's face. There may even be a brawl today. Bill Haney will get involved. Garcia's team will get involved. There'll be a lot of fallout from it. It'll be really interesting. It's brilliant matchmaking for Devin Haney, this fight, in my view, because Ryan's got the perfect style, perfect foil. He's the perfect foil for Devin Haney to look really good in this event. I think Devin Haney might even stop him late. But I think it's a fascinating fight. Haney might even get hurt by Garcia, but Garcia might not even get that near him. But he's got the power and the speed to cause an upset, certainly early. But yeah, it'll be noise like we saw last week with Jack Catterall and Josh Taylor. If you create a press tour and you allow, I don't know if they're allowing a crowd in. If they do, it'll be great, because it'll just razz up the entire thing, and it will be full of razzmatazz and carnival atmosphere. And it's a big fight. It's a big fight for America right now. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the contest itself on April the 20th. Has it got a venue yet? Is it New York?
It is New York. I think they're saying the Barclays Center in New York.
Okay, good. It'll be good. Yeah, so it's part of a brilliant first 6 months of 2024 for us in boxing. Really is. It's a staggeringly good year, Matt.
It is. They're going to say we're sort of picking up where the back end of last year ended and carrying on with these big fights. Well, where the whole of last year, I think, where we saw good fights. Joshua and Ngannou, obviously, next week. I'll be there in Riyadh myself for it. It's come around quick. It seems like these fights are not just getting made for 6 months' time, but they're coming thick and fast. How are you feeling about that fight as we're sort of approaching? Fascinated by obviously the Ngannou story, the fight with Tyson, and obviously Joshua is ever developing style under Ben Davison. Looking forward to this now, Gareth, as it gets closer.
Oh, absolutely. There's no one that isn't, because there is genuine jeopardy for Joshua in this fight. You look at what rewatch what Ngannou did against Fury. I know Fury had a terrible night against him, but rewatch what Ngannou did. He's a much better boxer than anyone ever gave him credit for. Holds his shape, counter punches well, punches with his opponent, switches to southpaw decently. It's clearly very resilient, clearly got a lot of self-belief, deep focus. In the last 4 days, I've done interviews with Thomas Carty, who was obviously sparring and Tyson Fury. He was the guy before the Croatian when Tyson Fury got cut. And now he's over here in the UK sparring Anthony Joshua. I had a great chat with him. And he says Tyson Fury was absolutely on fire in training. All this stuff about him being and you could see it in his shape. He said it was amazing. And I said, was he telescopic? Because a lot of people I speak to about Fury always say that he's so telescopic when you box him in sparring. It's like these big telescopes coming out at you all the time. And obviously, he's an incredibly long human being, isn't he? Big human being. And he said he was really enjoying sparring with Joshua, who was on top form as well. So good old Thomas Carty's getting the rounds under his belt. He also said, by the way, that Fury was in great shape in December when he was sparring with him up in Morecambe as well. Then I spoke to Ben Davison at length over in the Ben Davison Performance Centre. It's about 40 minutes drive from me, so I'm not too far away. Had a great time with him and Barry. Chris Congo bumped it. I think Chris Congo was there.
Yeah, turns out he's fighting Mark.
No, Lee Wood was there. Lee Wiley was there with him as co-strategist. And then this morning, before we took up, I was on a Zoom call with Dewey Cooper, who I'm good mates with, Francis Ngannou's coach. I caught up with him. That was fascinating. Their tunnel visions. They absolutely believe that they're going to get to Anthony Joshua and knock him out. It's so when you say, am I looking forward to it? When you got this kind of access, it's phenomenal. Obviously I have to work for the access, but it's phenomenal. It gets very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to putting out all this material. I went to see Frank Warren last week as well. He's really excited about the event. Nick Ball against Ray Vargas. Spoke to Nick Ball on Saturday night. He's on that card. That's a really good fight. It's going to be a war. And obviously we've got Joseph Parker and Zhili Zhang on the event. I spoke to Joe Joyce about that yesterday. I've been around the houses, haven't I, in the last few days? I spoke to Joe Joyce about that, about sparring with Francis Ngannou, about who he wants to win out of Parker and Zhang. Obviously, he sparred with one, Ngannou in Vegas, and he's fought the other two, and he's beaten one, and he's lost twice to the other. Obviously, he said, I'd rather fight Joseph Parker than Zhili Zhang, I'll be honest with you. So he'd like Parker to win. But it's, like you say, it's a really exciting time. There's so many things going on in the sport. Yeah. It's so thrilling at the moment. It really is incredibly thrilling. And we've got a schedule all the way up to to the the 1st of June. We know what that schedule is. It's very, very exciting. And I've got bookings to do events in MMA as well into September, October, November as well. So it's really exciting at the moment. Really exciting time.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a boxing fan, and there's still some big fights, even domestically as well, coming up that we're waiting to be announced, and we know that there's some in the pipeline as well. Well, look, Gareth, I appreciate you giving us some of your time. We will catch up again next week in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and we'll get a little bit more insight onto the main card, and we'll dissect it a little bit more. But yeah, thank you for getting in touch, and we will, 100% we'll catch up next week.
Absolute pleasure. Look forward to seeing you there, Matt.
We need to think of a new advert for freebets.com.
Get your best betting offers from freebets.com.
Yeah, that'll do.
The following deals are now live.